Hello world! Welcome to another Funky Monkey in-depth card review for new Rise of Shadows cards that were revealed this week. So earlier this week we have had 6 exciting brand new cards that Blizzard announced that will be in the next expansion. So today we will be going over each of those cards to see some of their strengths, weaknesses, and potential uses in some future decks as well. And I will also be rating them on a scale from 1 to 5 stars. 1 being we will almost never see them, 5 being we will see them in almost every single deck. So without further ado, let's hop into it. So the first card that we have up for today is Swampqueen Hagatha. She is a 7 mana 5/5 creature, and she has a battlecry effect. When she comes onto the battlefield, she will create a 5/5 horror. And what you get to do is you get to discover 2 spells to basically imprint onto this horror, and then it goes into your hand that you can use as another battlecry effect later on. So a couple of her strengths: she has amazing value. I mean, it's basically 2 cards in 1. You also get to discover these spells that you imprint on the horror as well. So depending on the matchup that you play against, you might be able to discover something that is absolutely crucial for winning your matchup against whatever class you're playing. Swampqueen Hagatha naturally also pairs well with her hero card, Hagatha, because she generates 2 minions total for 1 card, which means that over a couple turns, if you play both of these minions, you get 2 spells back to your hand with Hagatha. Now, a couple weaknesses with this card is, by itself, it is kind of a bad tempo play. I mean, on turn 7, if you're facing like an aggro or mid-range deck, oftentimes you really want to be kind of controlling the board and, killing your enemy minions. Well, if you drop this on turn 7, it doesn't immediately impact the board right away. You have to wait to play the horror that you discover from it next turn. Another weakness, too, is that it is RNG based, so sometimes the 2 spells that you get to discover, sometimes you just won't have any good spells that you'll get to choose from, and then you'll have kind of a dead horror card in your hand. So to wrap this card up, I actually do like this card quite a bit. If you look at how it can be used in some decks, I think it'll be used in kind of some more control, maybe some mid-range decks as well. We are going to be losing a mid-range deck though, so we are going to be losing Elemental Shaman because a lot of those are rotating. So I think this will fit in very well with some kind of a control Shaman. I think one card that is really going to drive Shaman to being top contender here is the hero card, Hagatha. Because if you look at a lot of those kind of infinite value cards that were really strong in the last rotation, like Frostlich Jaina, Deathstalker Rexxar, those guys created so much value from just their hero card that those decks were actually, very popular in the meta. And I think this will happen with Hagatha now, because we're not going to be having as many of those infinite value cards anymore, but we still have Hagatha to kind of drive Shaman forward. So any card that can really synergize well with that hero card like this, like Swampqueen Hagatha, I think will be a driving force in another Shaman deck. One deck right off the top of my head that this is pretty obvious for is for a Shudderwock deck, because not only does Swampqueen Hagatha have a battlecry, but her horror also has that battlecry effect as well with casting those 2 spells. So the 1 card, you get 2 very powerful battlecry effects, which you can use with Shudderwock since he will still be standard. One thing to note with this card as well too, with the 5/5 horror that you get from Swampqueen Hagatha, it does discover 2 spells that you can imprint onto it. They cannot be 2 targetable spells, but they can be 2 untargetable spells, or if the first one is a targetable spell, then the second one will have to be an untargetable one. So for example, if you choose Hex as your first one, then your second one would have to be something that doesn't target anything. So it'd have to be like Lightning Storm, Stormbringer, Rain of Toads, and so forth. Some of the better cards to imprint onto the horror would be, Rain of Toads, maybe Stormbringer, Hex, Farsight, Lava Burst, Haunting Visions, Lightning Storm, and maybe even Ancestral Spirit. In the example video that Blizzard showed us for the reveal of this card, they used Bloodlust. I don't necessarily think that's going to be a great one, just because Bloodlust is good in a deck that really utilizes a wide board, and I don't think Swampqueen Hagatha is going to fit in more of an aggressive deck. I think she's going to fit into more of a control-y style of a deck. So overall, I think this is a great value card, but like I said, you know, it is kind of more niche as to what kind of a deck this can fit in. So overall, I'm going to rate this 3 stars. The next card that we have up for today is Oblivitron. It is another legendary by Hunter, and what expansion wouldn't be complete without the key meme Hunter legendary? This is it. So right off the bat, I don't see too many strengths to this card. I mean, it is a mech, but currently, after rotation, we're not really going to have too many strong mechs, especially ones that have death rattle effects to be able to utilize this. So we would have to see if there's going to be any better mechs or death rattle effects in this next expansion. Maybe even some more death rattle triggers, kind of like how we had Hairskill Stalker or Play Dead. There aren't really any big mechs that you want to be able to cheat out with this card. I mean, the biggest ones that I can think of are Bulldozer or Damaged Stegodon, and I don't see any Hunter deck as is that will want to run those cards in the first place, and you certainly don't want to be running those cards just to be able to build around Oblivitron. This is also a very slow tempo card, so, you know, by itself, 6 mana, 3/4 is very, very slow. I think it has the stats of Glowstone Technician and Paladin, and that doesn't really see any play as well because it doesn't impact the board immediately, so you're losing a lot of tempo in turn 6 by playing it. This also has to die in order for you to gain the effect. So not only do you not gain the effect right away on turn 6, but you might not even see the effect until turn 7 or 8 until this guy dies. So also too, I mean, not only are there not very good mechs that you want to be able to pull out with this, but a lot of the mechs that you would want to, you know, use with this card in rotation just don't have that great of death rattles to begin with. Like, nothing that's game changing, nothing like Katharina, for example. So in conclusion, this card I don't see having too much play in the meta. It is a very, very slow card. Unless we see more death rattle triggers like Terraskill Stalker or Play Dead or some better mechs with maybe some better death rattles, I don't foresee us seeing this card at all. If we do see this card at all, it's probably going to be with some of the better mechs that we have right now, which are going to be Ziliax, Mechanical Whelp, Weaponized Pinata, and Spider Bomb. Those are about the only ones that you'd probably want to use with this card. So overall, I mean, we got our meme Hunter legendary, as always. So I'm going to go ahead and rate this 1 star. So the next card that we have is Lazul's Scheme. So this one says it reduces the attack of an enemy minion by 1 until your next turn, but it keeps going up by 1. Now, a couple strengths right off the bat is 1, it is free. You know, it is 0 mana cost, so you can use it whenever you want to. A couple of cards that really love this effect are Cabal Shadow Priest, meaning that you can steal a minion with this card. Topsy-Turvy, so you can reduce their an enemy minion's attack to 0 and then topsy it to kill it. And also the new card, Forbidden Words. So in conjunction with Forbidden Words, you could reduce the attack of a certain minion by, you know, for free, and then use the remaining mana that you have that turn to be able to kill it with Forbidden Words once it's down to that threshold enough that you can kill it with your mana. This card is also a really good card to trade with an enemy minion as well. So let's say you have a 4/4 creature on your side of the board, and your enemy has a 4/4 creature as well. You can use this card to reduce your enemy minion's attack to 0, so you can safely trade into it with your creature. So a couple of weaknesses to this one as well. Just like any scheme card, you do need to draw it early, otherwise it loses a ton of value in the later game. So just being able to draw this card early is going to be a trick, especially because we don't have Shadow Visions anymore in Standard. Also too, this card doesn't really do anything by itself. You do need other cards to kind of combo with it. So, you need another Cabal Shadow Priest in hand. You need another minion on board to trade with. You need another Topsy-Turvy to be able to kill a minion, but it is still a 2-card kill combination. So in conclusion, Priest is used to having these situational cards, so this is just another one of those. I think if we'll have a deck similar to how we had Dragon Priest before, although I don't know if Dragon Priest will be popular anymore because they're losing Duskbreaker, but if we still do have kind of like a minion-based Priest deck, I think this might see some play, because it would be really good to go ahead and trade one of your minions into an enemy minion with, You can also regain tempo by stealing an enemy minion with Cabal Shadow Priest. But in any other deck, I don't foresee this seeing too much play. One thing to note as well, this card is very similar to Twilight Acolyte, which we've seen already in some popular dragon decks. However, Twilight Acolyte was a little bit better than this card in my opinion because you create a body with it. Sure, you spend 3 more mana, but in Priest, having that extra mana and being more control-y is usually no problem. So overall, because it's kind of a bad standalone card and it really needs that synergy with other cards in your deck to be able to be utilized well, I'm going to go ahead and rate this card 2 stars. The next card that we have is our first warrior card that was revealed to us so far. It is Improve Morale. So you do 1 damage to a minion. If it survives, you get a lackey into your hand, which we have already talked about in one of my previous videos, but it is one of 5 minions that are 1 mana cost 1/1 creatures, and they have some kind of a battle cry effect. Whether it be do 2 damage to a minion, evolve one of your minions by 1 mana cost more, and so forth. So this card is very similar to a card that we've seen in past expansions called Blood to Ichor, which it basically did the same thing. It was a 1 mana cost little ping spell, does 1 damage to a minion. If it survived, it created a 2/2 creature. So this one just creates a lackey to your hand instead of creating a creature. One obvious effect to this card is it does activate those enrage or wall damage mechanics. So things like Frothing Berserker, Acolyte of Pain, Amani Berserker, Raging Worgen, Rampage, all of those effects. This is a very easy, cheap trigger for it. Now, one weakness to this is, unlike its cousin, Blood to Ichor, this does not create any immediate impact to the board. So you only get to do that 1 damage ping without creating any additional pressure. So in conclusion, this is very similar to the Blood to Ichor, but I don't think this will see too much play just because it doesn't have that immediate impact that decks that would use this card would like. A lot of the decks that would like to use this card would be those aggressive decks, ones that would use, Frothing Berserker, Amani Berserker, Raging Worgen, Acolyte of Pain, and so forth. And getting a lackey into your hands isn't really a good trade-off for losing a little bit of pressure. Also, in those aggressive decks that would want to run this, I think the Inner Rage is just better. I mean, it is free. You can use it, on those early turns where you can really start to apply that pressure early on. And then in mid-range decks, I don't think this will see too much play just because there's other better cards that outvalue it. So if you look at Slam, kind of does a similar effect for 2 mana, but you get to draw a card, which is very important in those control decks. If you would want to use that 1 damage ping to damage a minion so you can execute something, there's already better cards that control decks utilize anyways, like Dragonmaw Scorcher, Warpath. So I think it's just a little bit too slow for the aggressive decks and just not enough value for the control decks. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and rate this card 1 stars. For the next card, we have another scheme. We are only missing 1 now. We're only missing Dr. Boom's, but this one is Archthief Rafaam's scheme. What this one does is it is a 3 mana cost spell, summons a 1/1 imp on your side of the board for every turn you hold it in your hand. So straight away, just really cheap card, especially, if you hold it in your hand for quite a few turns. For 3 mana, you can fill up your board with 1/1 imps, and then you'll have quite a lot of mana left over on that same turn to be able to do other kind of combo effects with your full board now. But honestly, I think the drawbacks and the weaknesses outweigh the strengths with this card. As with any scheme, you do need to draw it early, otherwise it loses a ton of value. And one thing with the type of deck that would utilize this type of card would be more of those aggressive token warlocks, and they really need those early cost cards to be able to use them. They don't really like to hold on to cards. They want to be able to play the cards that they draw on turns 1, 2, and 3. So this is going to be kind of a dead card in a aggressive warlock for a while, which is kind of counterproductive to what their deck is trying to do. Another weakness as well is that it only summons 1/1 imps, but with a full board of 1/1s, it's still pretty easy to remove. So in conclusion, I don't think we'll see too much of this card. It is kind of a neat synergy card with Token Warlock. And a lot of classes are losing some of their, really cheap removal. So we are losing Defile, we are losing Spirit Lash, we're losing Blood Razor, but there are still quite a few in Standard. So we have Explosive Trap, Consecration, Unleash the Hounds, Fan of Knives, Blast Wave, Warpath. So there's still plenty of ways to deal with these little 1/1 imps. It might still see some play though in a token Warlock if people are crazy enough to play it. It still has great synergy with Knife Juggler, Direwolf Alpha, Scarab Egg, even Sea Giant as well too. You can get a very cheap Sea Giant with this card. And you also do get to create a lot of tokens for Spirit of the Bat as well. So if all of these tokens do end up dying, then whatever is left over in your hand gets buffed up by quite a lot. One thing to note as well is this card is very similar to Fiendish Circle, which we already have right now in Warlock. It is 1 mana less, but you have to hold it in your hand for about 4 or 5 turns later to be able to outvalue that Fiendish Circle. And Fiendish Circle doesn't really see play already, so that's why I'm kind of comparing it to this, and I don't think this one will either. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and rate this 1 star. And last but not least of these last 6 cards revealed is Omega Devastator. This one is probably my favorite out of the last 6 that were revealed this week. I'm just going over a couple strengths to this card. So it is a very good card for its stats. You know, it has some pretty decent body to its mana cost. 4 mana, 4/5 is always pretty good. It also does have the mech tag, so having that synergy always makes it a little bit better. If you compare it to a 1 mana cost less Nightmare Amalgam, it was very similar, you know. So the Nightmare Amalgam was a 3 mana 3/4. That would be a mech, and that saw quite a bit of play. If you draw this in the late game, it's pretty much just like a kill anything card, and then you still end up with a 4/5 on the board. One thing that this actually surprisingly does synergize with is Dr. Boom, the hero card in Omega Assembly. So you can go ahead and discover it with those effects as well. And chances are when you're using Dr. Boom or Omega Assembly, you're on turn 10 already. So just getting that as a discover, or when you happen to get it from Omega Assembly, this is going to be huge. You can also play this on curve to use in a mech deck if you want to. You know, there's really good minions on turn 5 that are mechs that you can go ahead and pair up with this. You can use it with War Gear, Ziliax, even Dinomatic as well too, because this is not a mech, it doesn't kill it, but it still clears your opponent's board. There aren't too many weaknesses to this card. Maybe it's just a little too slow for those aggressive decks. So, you know, if you are playing those aggressive enrage mechanic decks, I don't think this will be able to fit into that. But for pretty much everything else, I think this will see a lot of play. So in conclusion, I think this will be best in control decks, you know, obviously because they always like to get to that turn 10, and this is going to be a huge effect for that. We still do have Dr. Boom in standard as well, and having a mech with another mech with Dr. Boom is going to be fantastic because you can kill something with this card, then give it rush on turn 10. We might even see this in a mech dragon control deck. You know, I'm thinking things like Omega Devastator with Eternium Rover, Ziliax, Dinomatic, and then maybe even the Dragon package for the extra control, like Lancer and Crowd Roaster effects. You might even be able to play this in like a mech tempo deck as well, if you use things like Omega Devastator with War Gear, or with Ziliax, Security Rover, Beryllium Nullifier. So now all of a sudden there is some pretty good mechs for that, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 curve if you're playing just a pure mech tempo deck. So overall, because of its versatility and because it has that mech tag and warrior, I'm going to go ahead and rate this one 4 stars. Well, that is all the reviews that we have for today, sadly. Well, that is all the cards that we have to review for today, sadly. So thanks everybody for watching. I hope you learned a lot. I hope I gave you some ideas to be able to use these cards in the next expansion. Stay tuned as we get more reveals. I will be making more videos on the next cards in the future. If you like this content, you can also follow me on Twitter and Twitch. I do stream Monday through Friday, so you can go ahead and check that out. All the links should be in the description. And until next time, stay funky.